The NBA as a whole, up to this point, it's down 28% viewership on ESPN. That's a big chunk, right? So if you take the fact that the NBA Cup is down 10%, their new marquee thing, the whole viewership overall regular season is down 28%. And on top of that, last year's playoffs was down 12% from the previous year. So everything down, all the arrows are pointing down. What do we feel is the cause of this? What, like, the NBA ratings are clearly, under attack. Like, why do you think this is happening?
So in terms of ratings, okay, so I looked up a little bit on the ratings as well. So I feel like there's a few factors that are like all sort of coming together at the same time. So number one, I feel like the star power is not necessarily there. So we had like the biggest stars in the game for a decade plus, LeBron, Steph, KD. These guys are older now, right? So they're older, they're on their last leg. And now it's like this weird part where you have these younger guys, but they haven't really established themselves yet. You know who they are, but they haven't really won anything yet. So they don't really have that cachet, I think, to the average person, right? The average person knows Steph Curry. The average person knows LeBron, KD. But do they know Anthony Edwards yet? Do they know Luka Doncic yet? Do they know Wemby yet? I don't know. So, and to me, the number says maybe they don't. So that's one thing.
Lack of star power.
That's the lack of star power. I think like that's one thing. Another thing too is a lot of fans are sort of alienated now with the whole like social political movements and political stances and stuff in the NBA. You never used to get that before, right? The league is woke, right? And you never used to get that before. Back in the day, it was all when they had those commercials. Whitney Houston songs, I get so emotional, and you're seeing all the highlights and NBA, it's fantastic. Or, the NBA, the 90s came in and it was where amazing happens. And you're seeing, Michael Jordan never got political, right? So some people didn't like that about Jordan. But if you look back, it was smart.
Only black people didn't like it. Everybody else was glad he kept his mouth shut.
Only black Democrats, right?
Democrats, there you
go. Like black Republicans didn't mind. So, because he's like, hey, Republicans buy shoes too, right? And he's right. So if you want to appeal to everybody, you got to stay down the middle, right? In business, you got to stay down the middle. So one of the knocks I think people you can fairly give to LeBron is that he decided he wasn't going to stay down the middle. He decided he was going to take a side. Right? He's going to take a side. He's going to be political. He's going to talk about things. And as the game's biggest star, it's like you force the league's hand, right? So now when the league is in the bubble, you got these guys with slogans on the back of their jersey.
Yeah.
Like guys saying, education reform. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, you look back
come on, man. Come on, man.
Come on, man. What does that do, really? Right? So you put these slogans on the back of your jersey. What does that really do? How does that advance anything? Number one, does it do anything for the actual cause that's on the back of your jersey? No. Number two, does it actually, the people who already agree with you, they're already in your camp, right? So all you can do when you do stuff like that is lose people who aren't on your side.
You're against the Black Lives Matter movement and all that on courts and warm-ups. You're against that?
Looking back on it, I feel like they should have avoided it. At the time, I was.
They looked at that time to not touch on that when their whole league, the majority of the league is black. The George Floyd thing. You had white people saying, "Hey," like saying they're sorry for their sins, and something else. Like, okay, like,
So to me, there's a balance though. Like, as Emmanuel said, yes, you have a league that is predominantly black, so I agree that you do have to touch on it, but there's a difference between touching on it and making it everything about your league. When you put, the Black Lives Matter logo on the center court, where you have everyone in their warm-ups, when you have, do you guys all remember what Chris Webber was saying? Which I'm glad he's not an analyst anymore. Remember when he's like, we can't compartmentalize? Yeah, you heard what I said. Compartmentalize. We must compartmentalize, right? I was like, what are you talking about? He was trying to. You have a guy trying to talk about the black struggle that I don't think there's no. Obviously, he did not graduate from Michigan. I mean, it was just it was not for marketing wise. You have to think too, like it's almost like a Kaepernick thing. There is a marketing angle to sports as well, and you have to think of who your main. Even though the players are black, let's face it, the main consumers of the sport, the people who are buying the tickets, those people are not black, right? These tickets are, unfortunately, they are super expensive in a lot of cities. They may be unaffordable for the average person. You have a lot of corporations who are buying out tickets. It's a business in general. And once again, touch on it, but I think that was kind of the beginning of when ratings started to decline. And I think going forward now, I think it's almost a different issue besides the political issue. It's now the way the game is played. Way too many threes. And here's a funny thing. People thought that, okay, players shoot more threes, so we're scoring a lot more in this era, right? That's what you would think, right? The answer is absolutely not. If you look at the top 10 scoring teams of all time, only 2 modern era teams are in there. And if you go further, I can go top 25. I believe there's 4. And we can go further and further. So shooting more threes actually isn't increasing the score. Yeah. So then what are you doing, right? If you're shooting more and you're not scoring more, how is that making the game more exciting? The other day, who did Chicago play where they had 75 missed threes between the two teams? Charlotte. Can you imagine as a fan paying a game and watching nearly 100 missed threes? Like, you wonder why ratings are down. I mean, everyone's playing the same style. You've ran all the true bigs out of the game. A guy like Drummond should be starting and averaging 18 and 15 a game. He can't get any run. There's definitely a reason why it's down for basketball purists.
Are you saying that Steph ruined the league? Like, the reason why the ratings are down is because of Steph?
I don't want to blame a single player. Yeah. But the problem is everyone can't be Steph. I have no problem with the way Steph plays because Steph is great at doing it. He can make those shots. Everyone can't be like, here's the reality. When I'm looking at stats, I'm looking at everyone shoots 10 threes a game, and I'm just like, people who normally shouldn't shoot are easily shooting double digits. I'm just like, those 10 threes a game used to be reserved for your guys like Steph, for your guys like Clay. In last night's game, I watched Van Fleet. I stopped watching for a bit. I believe he was 1 for 10 at one point. Double-digit threes were reserved for the best three-point shooters in the game. Your Reggie Millers, your purest three-point shooters. Now it's a free-for-all for everyone. Before, people really didn't think Shea was a three-point shooter. And I'm not knocking. He's a great player. But now Shea has free reign to shoot 10, 12 threes a game. I'm looking at his threes. I'm like, okay, well, he's shooting threes too. Everyone's shooting way too many threes, and not everyone should be doing that.
I guess the point I was trying to make is the way Steph plays, he makes everyone feel like I could do the same thing because it's shooting. It's not dunking. It's not doing all that kind of stuff. So he's made it that every kid that walks in the gym now is warming up shooting threes from half court. That's the way the game is going on. That's what everybody wants to do. Right. So I'm not saying he ruined the game, but he's definitely influenced the way the game is played and the way people approach the game, whether it be the players or even the coaches. So definitely he's definitely impacted and changed the way coaches and players see the game and the amount of threes they want to take and the volume of threes that are going up. But I find it interesting, like you were touching on, Justin, like the highest scoring teams of all time are not all in the 2000s or the 2020s, like, because the 3-point shooting has grown tremendously in the 2000s, specifically 2010 and on, when Steph came to prominence. So you would then think that the teams that highest the most scoring would come from that time period, but it actually doesn't, right? Why? Because people were taking layups before. A 2-point shot is always better than a 3-point shot. It's a higher probability. So if you're going to shoot 10 threes, but you're only going to make 2 of them, versus somebody who's going to take 10 layups attempts and make 5 of them, make 6 of them, just do the math. Like, eventually you're going to get buckets. And I'm watching games and seeing teams have layups, turning them down to circle back around and kick it out to the 3-point line. You're on a fast breakaway. Back in the day, that's a good to the basket and one dunk, whatever. Now they're pulling up the 3-point line and shooting. Like, it's absolutely maddening. The best scorers of all time, well, LeBron, Kareem, KD, Jordan, Kobe, like, they're not major 3-point shooters. Right, Kawhi. We saw Kawhi when Kawhi was killing everybody. It wasn't a Steph Curry era, but he was doing it in the low post, backing people down, fadeaways. Like, he could hit the three, but that wasn't what he lived off of. Right. In the the highest scoring teams of all time, top 10. There's only twice a team from the 2000s are on that list. Right. The last year's Indiana Pacers at 123 points a game, and this year's current Memphis Grizzlies at 122. The Boston Celtics aren't even in there. The Boston Celtics, who take, I think, 60% of their shots are from three, are not even in this list. The number one team is 1982, Denver. Number two team, 1962, Philadelphia. Number three team, 1967, Philadelphia. Like, Wilt's teams, layups, right close to the basket, not threes. Like, even if you go to the number 10 team, 1968, Philadelphia. Like, I'm just searching the list. 17th is 2025 Cleveland Cavaliers. So it just tells you that, to your point, Justin, the more threes not leading to more points, which means, well, we're just seeing a lot of missed shots, which is an interesting.
Right? Exactly. So I've been saying for, I want to say probably the last 10 years that there's too many threes going on in this game. All this prevalence towards the 3-point shot is making the game worse right now. Obviously, I sound like an old person when I say this, but that's because I'm remembering the NBA basketball that I watched coming up was guys killing in the mid-range. And it's like the 3-pointer was there, but it's like, it's not something that you just take every single possession. If you're running down on a fast break and you have guys, instead of running to the basket, are running to the corners to stand at the 3-point line, doesn't make sense to me, right? Just to miss the shot. Right? It's like, okay, even if you make the shot, it's like, is that still a good shot? I remember years ago, I used to, when Steph, before Steph really became Steph, I used to say, okay, this guy is a good player, but he's taking a lot of bad shots, right? And then people push back on it, and I have since changed that because he's Steph. So what are bad shots for everybody else? He's different. Okay, they're not bad shots for him. But like Justin said, like you guys said, these other guys are not Steph. And these other guys are coming down and they're jacking up all these shots. Fred VanVleet's going 1 for 10, 1 for 11 from 3. Those are bad shots for Fred VanVleet. Regularly.
He's not the only one doing that.
Exactly. These are bad shots. And I don't understand. Like, I'm waiting for the team or the coach or the front office who's going to say, okay, you know what? We're going to zig while everybody else is zagging. And we're going to go back to focusing on mid-range. We're going to go back to focusing on getting higher percentage shots at the rim rather than focusing on all these threes. The analytics say that threes are worth more than 2. So therefore, it's smarter to be focusing on threes. Okay, and what do the analytics say about 2s being worth more than 0? Because if you're missing all your threes, meanwhile, other guys are getting layups, who's coming out ahead?
Yeah. It
doesn't make sense to me. And I don't understand. I'm waiting for the coach or the GM, somebody, to say, okay, why are we playing the game like this?
Like this?
Why? Why are we doing this?
I'm waiting too, but I think it's a tiered effect, sort of like Emmanuel say, okay, it kind of started off with, Steph Curry, but at the same time, if you can't hit those shots, then whose job is it? Your coach as a youth should be telling you, okay, you're not Steph Curry, you're not hitting those shots, you need to change your game. But it goes to even more than that. Why are we here now? The NBA has transacted. Charles Barkley has, stated many times. You have a bunch of Harvard kids. You hire a bunch of MIT guys, a bunch of Harvard guys, a bunch of Princeton guys, a bunch of Ivy League guys who've never played the game of basketball and who just look at numbers. And they say, statistically, this is what's going to work. And the reality is basketball isn't all about statistics. Anyone who's played knows that there's a feel, there's a rhythm, there's a flow to the game. You've completely taken the game and you've just put it into a box where it's strictly numbers. So now you have people playing the same way because the analytics tell you to do this. The triangle offense doesn't exist anymore because the analytics tell you that that's a poor offense. So, I mean, but when the analytics are telling you one thing and you're looking at the results, why don't you pivot? You're not going to pivot because everyone is saying that teams pay big money to have these guys on their team to tell them how to play. And they're not, I just don't get it because analytics should help the game, but at this point it's hurting the game. It's not, it was supposed to be, in my opinion, in addition, something extra to add, but now you've taken it and you've subtracted everything that was great with the game and you've added a bunch of fluff that shouldn't be part of the game. So
no, you're 100% right. Like, and what is analytics? Is data, is numbers, is science, it's math, and there's not a lot of randomness to that. So if every team says we're going to make analytics our primary focus in designing our team's offense, then everybody's going to start to play the same way, and that's what's happening. Like, all the teams play the same way. Going back to what we're talking about, why the ratings are down. Like, it's a 3-point shooting. Everybody's taking threes, flaring out to the corners, shoot 20, 30, 40, 50 threes a game, right? And every play on offense is a screen and roll, screen and roll, screen and roll, screen and roll. And every time they switch it. Like, I grew up playing basketball where you would fight through screens. That doesn't exist anymore. Like, every time it's a switch, even if you switch and it's a mismatch. So even if you're going to switch and get Kyle Lowry matched up against Wemby, it doesn't matter. Like, Van Vliet matched up against Anthony Davis, it doesn't matter. They switch it. We'll just switch, then go double, let him kick it out. Like, it's crazy. And no team, like, you can't watch a game and be like, this team has a different identity than this team or that team. Like, Golden State still kind of has a way they play. I think the Lakers are trying to pass the ball a little bit, but it's like a lot of teams play the same way, right? And it's boring. Like, I'm not watching the NBA as much this year. I'm one of those 28% that's down. Like, I'm not as interested in it because of all the things that we've been talking about. Like, the game is too robotic. I don't see enough passion in every game that I'm watching. And just 3-point shot, 3-point. Jason Tatum, like, he drives me up the wall, right? Like, Jason Tatum is a very talented player, 6'10". The way he plays with just stopping and shooting threes every single time, I don't like that type of basketball. Like, maybe I'm old, maybe I'm from a certain generation. I don't like that type of basketball, but clearly the numbers agree with me because everybody's starting to feel the same way. Like, I feel like part of the reason too why the ratings have gone down is there are no big name. I wouldn't say big name, but the best players in the league aren't American. So that's another reason, right? We know their American audience and we know how that goes, right? And these numbers are ESPN, so they're American audience driven, right? And the best players in the league are Shea, Luka, Jokic, Giannis. Like, you say all of them. Wemby, he's big known. Like, before you even get to Tatum, Booker, Edwards, like, before you even get to those guys. So I think that also goes with, there's players that they can't really connect to, relate to. And the last part I'm going to say is the NBA games when I was a kid, like, it was on, it's on NBC, or then they were on CBS for a short time. You had Brett Musburger or like Marv Albert. Like, I'm turning it on. It's on this channel. I'm watching. Now it's everywhere. So, like, how many people don't have cable? Like, you got to have some type of app or some type of something to watch it on Prime or ESPN or wherever the hell the game is. And I think that also is like, I watch NBA games every time, man. I'm not paying for them. I'm not exposing nobody's business, but I don't know if you guys are paying for them either. So all of that relates to the numbers being down and where people are not consuming it versus where and the way we consumed it 30 years ago. Right?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Like, the way people are consuming games now are not, a lot of people, the way they're consuming games now are not being captured by Nielsen ratings. Right. Yeah. So if you're streaming games and you're streaming them illegally, then obviously nobody's going to catch your ratings, right? So if the ratings are dropping, the ratings will probably drop consistently because more and more people are turning to alternative ways to watch these games because they cost too much.
Yeah.
right? So everything is all connected, right? Because you talk about these players who always need incentives to play hard. And it's like, okay, but you guys are making more money than you've ever made before, but yet you need more incentives to play hard. And it doesn't make sense, right? So that's what the money is for. That's what the money is for. But instead, now you need more. Like, oh, well, give us an extra cup and give us more bonus money. Give us a trip to Vegas in the middle of the year. It's like, why? And now they're thinking about tweaking the All-Star game. They tried to do the Team LeBron versus Team Steph, and they did that for a couple of years. Okay, now then they got tired of that, and now they're trying to, oh well, maybe we'll take three pickup squads versus a team of young guys, and then have these guys all play each other. Like, what is happening? All this stuff just to make these guys care, right? Because the viewers don't care as much because when they're watching the game, these players don't care as much, and the game is not as good. And then if I do care, now I got this guy telling me I'm a racist because right because for this or that reason. So it's like, why should I watch this?
He's not telling you. The jersey's telling you that.
Right? The jersey's telling me I'm a racist, right? So why should I watch this thing? So it's all these factors, and it's like, I think somebody had sent me a post recently regarding the David Stern and his dress code policy that he instituted back in the 90s. Then people are like, oh, it was a racist policy because he didn't want guys dressing like Allen Iverson, and Phil Jackson had a quote saying these guys are coming to the game in prison garb, right? So it's like coded language. Was it racist? I mean, maybe he probably was. But the thing with David Stern is that he was a guy who oversaw the league in its biggest growth in history, right? So he was the guy who was running it when it was Magic versus Bird, and then when Jordan took over. And he was a guy who, when he was taking over, the NBA finals were on tape delay, right? They weren't being broadcast live. The league was seen as too black, too drugged out. We're not watching this product. That's what the average American consumer is saying. So David Stern had it like, okay, how are we going to get this game into the homes of Americans? We need to sanitize this product so that the consumer can buy in. And exactly, whitewash. So that was his focus. So when you think about that whole dress code change and stuff, it's like David Stern only knew one way. It's like, how do I make the average American consumer care about this product, right? So somewhere along the lines, that has now changed. And it's now gone more towards like, well, we're going to do what aligns with our, political
players want.
What aligns with what the players want and stuff like that. And it's like, I get it. But when it comes to a long-term business strategy, I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go. So
yeah.